It's the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White, and it is episode 525 of the Security Weekly News. It's Friday, the 31st of October, 2025. It is Halloween in the United States, and maybe wherever you are too. All Hallows Eve, head down to Lovecraft's house in Providence, drink a lot of Fireball in the parking lot of a bowling alley, get in hot water for asking the state trooper if that's a sexy state trooper costume or just the angry state trooper costume. Forget you had a fifth of old granddad in your lap and offer the trooper a drink. Wake up later and realize the state trooper was actually a rabbit and you were laying underneath the slide at your old school crying in a toga made out of a shower curtain. Yeah, Halloween. Welcome to the show. Today we got AI cheating, Canada, npms, passkeys, exchange, Solaris, the amazing Rob Allen of Threatlocker, and more on this edition of the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News. Ransomware, supply chain attacks, 0 days, cyber threats don't wait, and neither should your defenses. With Threatlocker, you're not just reacting to threats, you're stopping them before they start. Our zero trust endpoint protection locks down your environment with pinpoint control over what's allowed to run and what's not. No guesswork, no blind spots, just proactive, built for now security that keeps your business moving. Want to see how a true default deny strategy works? Head over to securityweekly.com/threatlocker and take the first step towards shutting the door on threats before they even knock. All right, it's the Security Weekly News on Halloween. I'm Doug White. Hit that like and subscribe button and leave a comment, or I will be coming by your house tonight. Trick or murder. Yeah. Or maybe I'll just pass out in the front yard. It's hard to say. Well, our friends in Canada at the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity warned. Wait, do Canadians warn? I think it would be better to say something like kindly suggested. Sorry. Okay, that's all the Canadian jokes. I love you guys. But can Canada produce Space 1999, like one of the coolest sci-fi shows, drinking in a tiny shed on a frozen lake and hoping you don't die? Tim's, craft dinner, Canadian, everything Canadian. Yeah. Amara usque ad mare. Yeah, that's a Canadian motto. Sea to sea with moose. Mies. English is hard. Die Elka. Yeah. See, in German, it makes sense. It's like moose. Mooses. But yeah, where were we? Okay. Oh, Canada. Yeah, okay. Nobody's going to get that joke. But if you haven't seen SCTV. But anyway, Canada said that hacktivists have breached critical infrastructure systems multiple times and that the breaches allowed for the modification of ICS controls. Yeah, you just don't want to hear that. Even if it's from Canada. I mean, you're like, that's bad, right? I mean, basically, this they were suggesting, so the Canadian cybersecurity group suggested ICS systems that are internet exposed, which you shouldn't have those, but they need to adopt stronger security measures to block attacks. Well, I mean, okay, I got to say, yeah, I agree with that. But my warning, which is more like screaming rather than kindly suggesting, is don't expose your ICS systems. Use multi-factor, only allow connections via VPN to private VLANs and all that good stuff, right? I mean, don't even trust your internal people with this. Like, don't let anybody be able to access, that valve control that releases the radioactive water into the flood basin. But the alert shared that recent incidents with hacktivists were accessing systems at a water treatment facility, an oil and gas operation, an agricultural facility, and were actively manipulating dials, gauges, and other controls. So Canada also kindly suggested that you inventory and assess all internet accessible ICS. I'm like, inventory and assess all of it, not just internet access. I mean, I want to know where all of it is. And remove that internet access if possible. Use VPNs with two-factor auth and so forth, all in there. I mean, we've been shouting that from the rooftops for years, but now when the Canadians say it, you listen. Yeah. All right. 10 malicious packages mimicking legitimate software projects in the NPM registry are actually info stealers. Imagine that. The packages were uploaded to the NPM on the 4th of July, and they were so well disguised that they weren't found until recently. So Socket, which is a research organization, said that the 10 packages had around 10,000 downloads and stole creds from keyrings, browsers, auth services, and so on. And guess what? Even after they got reported, the packages are still there on NPM. That was reported on the 29th, still there, 31st, big problem. The packages use a fake CAPTCHA challenge that makes them, I guess, look legit. If it's got CAPTCHA, it couldn't possibly be a problem. But basically, once you pass the CAPTCHA challenge, which I have a feeling everybody does for once, I would know it was something was squirrely if I actually got through it in one try. You know, click everything that is possibly a wombat. It's like, wait, what is that on the side? Yeah, that kind of stuff. But it basically, after you get past the CAPTCHA, it downloads a 24 meg info stealer that is packaged in PyInstaller. So, you're doing stuff with Python already. You download something, PyInstaller runs, and you're going, oh, okay, that's fine. They do use typo squatting. So they've got legit names like TypeScript.js, which is a really common NPM. And theirs is TypeScript.js, no dot. So they're pulling that kind of trick. So one, always carefully assess what you're downloading from any repository. I would recommend downloading these things into a Judascope machine or a test bed or a virtual machine that, you can test it, see what it does, and make sure it's not dangerous, and maybe take some real caution with these things. You might want to implement code review on, any kind of add-on packages to put in your SBOMs, or just plain old common sense. I mean, think about it. So definitely some policy around this for your devs and for everyone else in your organization who may have decided to write some, vibe coded Python today and went, let's download some NPMs. In the same light, a new supply chain attack called Phantom Raven is also in NPM, and it has malware that steals credentials, tokens, and other secrets while it's being installed. This is a slightly different thing because it's quite interesting. It looks safe when you download it. Koi Lab, which found this, and they found the campaign, said that the campaign had been running since at least August of 2025 and involved 126 malicious packages published from multiple accounts with at least 86,000 downloads this time. Now, the collection uses remote dynamic dependencies, which is a feature in that installer. And it basically means that when you download it, it looks empty, like there's nothing there at all. In fact, the only thing that was in it is a little hello world snippet. There's no suspicious code, but when it installs, now, I mean, I would be suspicious if I downloaded a package and it was only had hello world in it. I'm like, well, what's the point of this package? But when you install it, the package then immediately downloads additional code from a remote server and then executes all that code locally. The packages may have some hello world placeholders and things in them, but I always try to look at these things when I download them before I implement them and see maybe if I can figure out what they're actually doing. Now, they didn't really say how the remote dynamic dependencies work in this particular case, but the approach can be reused. They said it would likely be adopted by others very soon. So you really want to probably think about what's going to happen when Robert down in sales decides to vibe code an app and downloads NumPy instead of NumP. Yeah, it can happen. The use of passkeys doubled between 2024 and 2025. I think partially, at least, because they were made available all of a sudden via Google and Amazon, and so people started adopting them. But a report from Dashline said that monthly passkey authorizations grew to 1.3 million on their system in 2025, and that 40% of all Dashline users now store at least one passkey, which was up from 20% in 2024. Google, trying to serve as a single sign-on location for pretty much your whole life, saw the largest share of passkey authorizations and reported a 352% increase year over year. Amazon made passkeys a default mobile sign-in option on Amazon, so that, of course, increased their demand as well. So basically, they said about 40% was currently the share of passwordless authentications at Amazon. I like the idea. Running all your logins from one place with one key is kind of like having one key for everything you own, which is a little bit worrisome. And I hope it doesn't get lost. And I hope the person that's holding the key doesn't, abuse it or anything like that. But passkeys are definitely better than passwords. I mean, no doubt. And, when you add multi-factor authentication to that, the passkey is more secure. I just to make sure I wasn't saying something inappropriate, which imagine that. But I found a couple of academic papers this year that were peer reviewed that Tron in Applied Sciences and Butner and Grushka in Proceedings of the ICISSP both had articles out this year. You can cite if you need them. You can Google those names, and they had proof that passwordless was better. I mean, I'm happy to see it. Sometimes concerned about who's tracking it and who's tracking what you logged into and what keys you have there and so forth. Single points of failure, so that when that DNS failure hits and you can't actually get to your and all that kind of stuff. So, but in general, I'm a fan. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, and the National Security Agency, or NSA, and some other international partners, including Australia and some others, released their best practice guidance for securing Microsoft Exchange servers. That follows an emergency directive about Exchange earlier this year. The new guidance focuses on on-premises Exchange servers. So if you have those, you might want to pick this up. It's free. And it does emphasize the persistent threat to organizations using Exchange. So it was not a very, favorable kind of thing. But that's why I run Comet Mail and Arch Linux down in the tunnel. But it takes a lot of setup to run Comet Mail on Arch Linux, but at least it probably won't work at all in the long run. The first half of the guidance is all the things you should be doing in general. So it's a great way to get started. And it's so the second half of it is starting to get into how to configure all the TLS encryption and so forth, so you can protect all the layers and the privacy of your users. Of course, if you're still running Exchange 2007 and you've got that migrate soon Post-it note on your monitor and it's sort of started to fade and it's kind of, getting the edges are curling up. And you also notice that you wrote Katie's graduation on it as well and went, oh, wow, I guess I forgot that too. But might be a good time to document, a review and review this document in Exchange. Even if you're running vmail on Solaris with users on Pine, you're probably safe. But, that would be so old, no one could ever figure it out. Pine. Remember Pine? University of Washington email client and links for browsing? Now you're cooking. All that and some ASCII 2 porn for your viewing pleasure. And, hey, you got a party. So keep it in mind. Well, sometimes you're walking and you see something cordoned off and there are like bomb dogs and guys in crazy bomb tech suits trying to frantically steer you away from the hole in the ground, but you were working, the New York Times crossword puzzle on your phone and weren't really paying attention. And it turned out it was an old unexploded artillery shell from World War II or World War One. I asked the guy, I was like, which one's worse? And he was like, don't ask. But something was found when some kids were trying to dig for gold in their front yard. Yeah, no, I don't remember any of that either. But what about all that old infrastructure you've got laying around that you forgot about? I did do a response case once, and we found servers in a sub-basement that had no keyboards, no monitors, but it was still sitting there under a pile of junk running, and it was still attached to the network. We one time in an incident response found a rogue connection to the internet that was running through DSL lines that no one even knew were there. I mean, they could not figure it out. They had air gapped their network to keep this guy out of their network, and he was still getting in typing "ha ha." And they called me and said, "Can you come look at this?" And I was like, "Wow, that's creepy." And they were like, "Yeah, it's creepy because look, it's disconnected." And I'm like, "That's weird." And then, I said, "Well, he's getting in somehow." So we started chasing stuff down, and we found, they had an old internet connection in another building, or even that old Solaris box down in the steam tunnel where we did those email experiments in 1999. That thing stayed connected and running for years and years and years. I did label the box I put the server inside of experimental Ebola virus caution. So I figured not many people are going to open it. And it literally ran for like 5 years after I left. I didn't even work there anymore. And that email server I could still access it. So code banks, APIs, old Oracle test boxes, S3 buckets, you name it. These are called zombie assets. What better thing to talk about on Halloween? These things get worse in the cloud to me because now I can't even, hear them beeping under that old pile of firefighting gear in the basement. We did find a server like that once. I was like, what is that sound? And he was like, I don't know. Nobody's come down here in years. And underneath a bunch of firefighting gear, there was an old pizza box server sitting there just churning away. Can you not see that baleful red light shining in the pitch black darkness of the sub basement that no one went in for 7 years because Dr. Rattan spilled that vial down there? But now someone's connecting to our network and that's where it's coming from. And what was that I just heard? Yeah. So maybe Halloween's a good day to start thinking about, zombie asset catalogs, not just Active Directory listings of assets, but, are there things that are not on your radar down in Dr. Fang's lab that are still running, Windows 95? And it's connected. Old demons just sitting around on old hardware waiting for someone to send a TCP packet to port 666. Yeah, those kind of things. All right. Well, I tried a summoning spell this morning to just get some bagels and coffee to appear. And at first, I thought it was old Nick himself, but it turned out it was just a very confused CTO saying, "Stop summoning me onto your show." We did get the amazing CTO of Threatlocker, and as always, it's a pleasure when he turns up. Rob Allen. Hi, Rob.
Good afternoon, Doug. I have to say, I'd have to go down the other end of our office if you wanted our CTO. What you have got is better. It is the CPO.
Oh, didn't you used to be the CTO?
No.
Oh, you were always the CPO.
Always is a
mostly.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I apologize. It was the CPO. Thank you for
talking. Definitely CPO, not CTO.
Okay. Well, thank you for correcting that. So.
That's okay. I just didn't want our actual CTO to get offended when he.
Well, maybe he should have come on the show.
We can make that happen, Doug. I'm sure we can make that happen.
Yeah, that would be fun. We could have the C. We could have all the C's on the show. We can get Danny and everybody to come on.
Yes, indeed.
So we can. Yeah, they were wanting to do some holiday shows, so we can have the Threatlocker holiday party crew or something.
Ooh, yeah. Okay, I'll file that one under consideration.
I think we should do that because we were just talking about what we were going to do for like the Christmas, New Year's period when we record a bunch of shows in advance, and that would be cool. It would be fun to talk to all of you guys.
Sure would.
All right, we'll keep that. I'll mention that to Renee. So, all right. Well, thanks for being on, CPO.
I feel really bad for setting you straight.
No, I'm glad you did. I feel like an idiot for not. I should have looked that up. I don't even know why I thought that. But
that's okay. That's okay, Doug.
I was just having one of those moments, I guess. I'm elderly. Leave me alone.
You went, yes. All that talk of old software pretty much aged you. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah,
etc. Yes.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it aged me because I knew what you were talking about too.
Solaris.
Mm-hmm.
We love Solaris. That was my favorite. Until they started naming all their machines stupid stuff. Like I kept calling one the Raging Stallion because they were called like Sunfire and all this macho-sounding stuff. And the guy got really frustrated with me though because they were trying to show us the system. I was like, it's called what? Raging Stallion? Like Rampant Maverick.
I'm not going to lie. The company I used to work for, we did go through a Simpsons phase where we had Homer. Wow. And I think Homer was the DC. We had Marge, and we had I think everyone goes through that phase at some stage.
Everybody has phases with that. I'm still stuck on Babylonian gods, but I haven't run out of them yet. But all right. Well, thank you for coming, Rob.
Good to be here.
You have a story you want to talk about? You want to talk about this ransomware stuff? And
yeah, it's not a specific story. It's more of a trend, is how I would describe it.
Well, so I think that's a good thing to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's just that there seems to be a uptick in VPNs, either compromised credentials or vulnerabilities in VPNs that are being exploited by threat actors. A couple of groups target them specifically. I mean, it's not difficult to go onto the dark web and buy access from access brokers. I suppose the genesis for this from us was we had a conversation with one of our advisory board guy. Literally all he does is incident response. And he mentioned that they had seen multiple instances of ransomware attacks where the threat actors at no point had a foothold in the network. So they didn't get access per se to anything within the network. It didn't start within the network. They got in via, in one case, it was compromised credentials, VPN, obviously without MFA. And in another, it was vulnerability in the VPN itself that they'd exploited. And they were able to remotely encrypt VMware servers without ever accessing something inside the network to do so. They were able to do it completely through those VPNs.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I'm always telling people to use VPNs, but I think I've tried to qualify it more than that because I know about these things. And I mean, there's certainly the 0 day in your VPN, so you don't want to be exposing the management interface of that thing. And there's always, of course, credential violation, which is why you need that multi-factor, at least two-factor, to try and prevent that from happening. And then there's one more piece of that. It's you don't want to trust it.
well, and this is a large part of the problem because in a lot of places, a lot of cases, for convenience, people will link their VPN accounts to their AD accounts because when somebody gets authenticated, then you want them to be able to access resources inside the network. And that opens up a whole other area and a whole other series of concerns because if there is compromised credentials out there, if somebody does get into that, they've suddenly got access to your network resources. And as I said, that's a whole other problem. So it's, I mean, Microsoft do their digital defense report. I actually haven't seen this year's report yet. I'm assuming it's on its way, but last year's one was particularly interesting because they mentioned that 70% of ransomware attacks involve remote encryption. So remote encryption being something that is unprotected, encrypting data on something that is. So you can protect the hell out of your systems. You can do everything right. If you have, again, a VPN that's been compromised or credentials that have been compromised and you allow anything that is on that VPN connect to your network resources, it is trivial for a bad guy to encrypt stuff without, as I said, ever touching your network.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's to me one of the dangers of single sign-on in the first place. Is just like you tend to overtrust it.
Absolutely.
And if you've got this entry point and you should be assuming that all these credentials are going to get compromised. I mean, I just always tell people you should assume that somebody's going to use the same password here they use somewhere else, or they're going to use a weak password somewhere else. You've got to have that multi-factor piece of it. Were the VPN like compromises when they actually compromised the VPN itself? Was that through the management interface?
No, not necessarily. In this particular case, as I said, one was it doesn't need to be a management interface. Realistically, if there's a vulnerability in the VPN, you can get in. I mean, realistically,
True.
opening a VPN port or exposing a VPN port to the internet is just one more exposed port to the internet. You're by definition increasing your attack surface. And I mean, it seemed for a while during the year that it was pretty much weekly that different VPN or different firewall vendors, different hardware vendors were having CVEs being released or announced. I mean, it was basically every day of the week that ends with a Y, there was a new vendor that had some vulnerability that was either being exploited or had been exploited. So the fact is, opening a port at all, exposing a port at all to the internet is expanding your attack surface. But if you have to do it, there are things that you can do. I mean, as I said, just assuming that when somebody is connected to a VPN, they're okay to connect to everything on the inside of your network, that is not a good thing. So as you said, assume that assume that a bad actor can get in. How do you make their life more difficult? I mean, you can fundamentally, the way we recommend is that, well, look, you may need to do that, but at the same time, why would you let an unprotected device connect to a protected device? And that's the approach that we take, is basically whether a port, whether SMB is exposed on the server depends on what's connecting to it. If it's a protected device, it's going to be able to connect. If it's not, it won't. So that means even if your VPN gets compromised, if somebody does get in on that, they still won't be able to do any damage. They won't be able to remotely encrypt data or remotely connect to machines that they shouldn't be able to connect to.
Yeah, I saw that a couple of times for the VPN entry point, which was just had no security at all behind it. I mean, we were looking at that, and I mean, it had a login, but if you could get onto that VPN, you were pretty much trusted at the highest levels. I mean, it wasn't even like, good firewalling tactics. It was just literally like, okay, these connections are all trusted. And that, like you said, then they can jump on there and encrypt things.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, there's been so many different examples of this of late. The one we spoke about was one, but there's, dozens, hundreds happening. I mean, a lot of them, and this is the whole thing with ransomware, is that very often you don't even hear about them. It's only the really big, really serious cases or things where, car company can't make cars or, distributor can't distribute software that you hear about it. But I mean, it is literally a daily occurrence.
I agree. I mean, it's almost become numb. You see so many of these kind of compromises. But I think that's just another zero trust point that you need to be on, is that just because it came in on the VPN doesn't mean it's a good thing. And always
100%.
And always be aware that your VPN may have its own holes. I think that's
No, well, not even be aware. Assume that it does.
assume.
It
I think that's fair.
probably does. It's just a question
Yeah.
of whether or not those holes are actually known about it and being actively exploited right now. I mean, I think that's a really great way to look at not only VPNs. I mean, obviously they have holes, but software, everything you run, assume it's full of holes. Assume those things that are, I mean, just look at an average Patch Tuesday. How many CVEs get fixed? How many exploitable vulnerabilities, serious vulnerabilities are in Windows right now? A lot.
Yeah.
So
lot.
yeah, no,
I know. I
everything
mean,
is full of holes and act accordingly is a really great way to look at things.
Watching Chrome have to update 3 times a week.
Our applications team know fully aware of that. Yes, it's probably the thing that they worry about most often and have to check most often for updates because of the number of updates. And
I mean,
again, there's a good reason for those updates, which is it's full of holes.
And patching is so difficult. I mean, it's bad enough if you're patching a desktop computer, but when you start trying to patch VPN endpoints and firewalls, and it may, I mean, I have seen it break everything when you ran a patch, and all of your certificates broke, and you're like, okay, I got all these people that need to be in here, and that's why people put off patching, because they sit there and go, if I do this today, that would be bad.
We had a conversation, or Danny rather, our CEO had a conversation with a guy once upon a time, and his strategy regarding patching his servers was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I get that. I'm not a huge fan, but I will say that I understand it. I mean, I've been in that.
Understanding, yes, but at the same time, I've got news for you, buddy. It is broke. That's why there are patches available. So
it's, I mean, and even just saying we don't expose this is still dangerous, because you have internal users that may be taking advantage of that stuff too. And we've seen that. I mean, I saw that in a school, and the school principal was like, we think it's foreign hacker people, that like the Chinese, and we go in there and look at it, and it's a bunch of middle school kids who figure, who basically were dark reading or something, and saw this exploit and jumped in there and were using it to get into the grades machine. And I'm like, no, dude, it's not the Chinese. It's just,
the schools are actually a really interesting case, because again, everybody's got this idea in their head, or their heads, that threats are coming from the outside. I did a panel, a cybersecurity panel discussion in Dubai a couple of years ago, and there was a lady from a school, and she very correctly said that, look, we have to look from both areas. We've got like hackers on the outside trying to get in, and we've got hundreds of hackers in the inside trying to get in as well. So they are a particularly interesting case. But again, it all comes back to the idea of zero trust, and they don't need to access these resources, so don't let them access these resources.
Yeah. But yeah, schools, prisons, and hospitals.
Prisons are a fun one. One of my favorite instances of a unexpected use of ThreatLocker and what it does was, we were speaking to a correctional institution, and they had said to us that, look, we've got this problem and we want to know if you guys can help us solve it. And the problem they had was that the inmates were using the clip art feature in Office to get to porn sites. And I'm like, look, these guys have figured that out. They nearly deserve it, But they were saying to us, well, look, can your ring fencing stop them? And I was like, yeah, well, yes, our ring fencing can. But I mean, look, the guys have gone to this much effort.
Yeah, just cut them a break. They're in prison already. So
I mean, they're locked up already. No, we didn't say that. We said, yes, we can solve that problem for you, which is we can stop Office from accessing the internet. Problem solved. No more porn for inmates.
Then the riots started.
Yeah,
Attica. Yeah. I mean, I've seen that in schools and in hospitals, because you have a captive audience that doesn't have stuff to do. And I got in trouble in the hospital.
Nothing but time.
My wife was in labor. We're there for 12 hours, and I'm like sitting there going, I can get into this Linux system that doesn't actually have any security. And the anesthesiologist, who was supposed to be doing this like spinal tap thing, came over and was like, how are you doing that? And I was like, oh yeah. My wife's like, over here, please. I've got a needle in my back. And the guy was like, oh yeah, so sorry.
That was one of my favorite recent cases. So there was a fairly well documented case of a CEO of a cybersecurity company who was arrested You'll find it. Just Google cybersecurity company CEO arrested. You'll find it. Now, again, no judgments at all. I don't know if it's ongoing. I don't know if it was confirmed. He had his own story that he sort of put out there on LinkedIn. So the story was, or the apparent story was, that he installed malware on a computer in a hospital. And he basically came out and said, look, I didn't install malware on a computer in a hospital. I ran some PowerShell. And in fairness, he did. He actually posted the PowerShell, a snippet of the PowerShell on LinkedIn, said, this is what I did. Now, fun fact, I actually grabbed that PowerShell and we now use it for demonstrations because it's really cool. It basically just in his case, I think it was every 20 minutes, it took a screenshot of the machine and uploaded it to his server. But the interesting part about it was, and this is, I think, pretty much indicative or symptomatic of why hospitals have such problems, was the way he was able to access two computers within the environment was, one, he walked up to it and jiggled the mouse and he was in. The second one, the username and password was on a sticky note on the side of the box.
Yep.
That's where your problem comes from. I mean, look, the sticky note is a no-brainer, but I mean, it's another thing that we actually tell people about, just in terms of simple steps you can take, is set a goddamn password protected screensaver. Just have it lock every minute. It's going to stop somebody from randomly walking up to your computer, jiggling the mouse and getting in.
We were getting in by shifting terminals on Linux. They had like all these terminals and none of them were secured at all, including the one in our room. It was like a monitor for like, vital statistics, which I also got in trouble for because the guy was like, you don't think we might need to see your wife's heart rate? I was like, oh, sorry, I was bored. And but yeah, so that kind of stuff. All right. Well, thank you for joining us on Halloween, Rob. It was a pleasure as always. And you're
absolutely
always welcome to jump in, and I'll get your title right one of these days.
You will.
But, I
believe in you.
That's probably your first mistake. But anyway, I think that is a wrap for today on Halloween. I will be at OneCon next week. Rob will be in some exotic location. Who knows? I think
the word is the word is Texas, Doug.
Well, that's exotic. Assuming we can all fly. So it's going to be that little fun problem.
Fingers
going on.
crossed.
But thank you for joining us, and Aaron and company will be here for you next week while I'm at OneCon, and I'm sure we'll see Rob again real soon. So thanks so much, and have a happy Halloween.
You too, my friend.